This is a Secure Cyber Connect podcast live with Jay Anderson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Today we are delighted to be joined by Chris Jefferson from Advai.
Yeah, thank you.
I've hopefully pronounced that correctly.
No, you got it. I mean, it's a confusing name, so it does come up a lot.
So Chris, could you give us a high-level overview of who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Chris Jefferson. I'm co-founder and CTO for a company called Advai. Within that role, I look within the company in terms of technology strategy, how we bring through deep tech AI research and turn that into scalable services and tools for our customers. Primarily, though, what I focus on and what the company does is how do we test AI, how do we understand how it fails, and how do we enable adoption by understanding where that risk lies.
So Chris, look, everybody in cyber has made a mistake or two. What's the biggest mistake or the most memorable mistake that you've made in your time within the sector, and what did you learn from it? You know, how did you lead your way out of it, if you will?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about cybery mistakes, I think it's the classic one is deploying a container outside the firewall. And so one of the issues with that was that we put it up, it was for a proof of concept, and then what we very quickly saw, there's, as you do, someone had scanned, found the IP and started running scripts against it. And so the realization that we'd pushed this out there and it was being used, and I think someone was actually trying to start Bitcoin mining using the container. But thankfully we'd actually implemented container security underneath, so nothing was able to be called. So once we saw that the activity was being logged, we were able to shut it down. But it did kind of flag that, right, okay, even if we are pushing out, we really need to control the effectively the firewall in front of any system deployed a bit more, even at this kind of very early piloty proof of concept stage as well.
A big lesson learned there, especially for our audience that are perhaps startups or those that have got your underdeveloped teams. So yeah, look out for those basics. And from your perspective, where you're standing with your clients, peers across industry, are there any blind spots or perhaps industry gaps that you feel need addressing? And if so, what are you doing to address those gaps?
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. So one of the things we look at is effectively vulnerability from adoption and use of AI models within any system architecture. And so one of the gaps it's being talked a lot more about now, but the way it is addressed is still a huge gap from a cyber and security perspective. And it's how AI models both have access to information, how they gain autonomy, but also how they can be controlled purely through the data that's sent to them. And so because we're dealing with an information layer which has now a larger impact on architecture and anything that's connected to it, there's still this gap in terms of how you control AI within a network to prevent leakage, security access, unintended outcomes. So I'd still say that's a strong gap in the modern era.
And in terms of events like International Cyber Expo, and obviously all here for the next couple of days at ICE, what it's clearly very important, but what personally do you feel the benefits are from your own side of things, and what's brought you here over the last couple of days?
So I'd say there's two things that have really drawn us to this. I think the first one, purely from a kind of a business and customer relationship piece, is it's seeing the people we're working with, being able to touch base, talk about the problems, get a little bit more insight into what's going on in their worlds. And so everyone's got their own environments, everyone's got their own challenges.
Absolutely.
And so that feedback is so valuable. From a kind of a technology and challenge perspective, I think the real interesting piece here is that just being able to talk about where with AI adoption, we're seeing the gaps, the challenges, especially from autonomous cyber defense. I mean, if you're seeing adoption of AI from a cyber network perspective, this is a real frontier piece of technology. And so being able to both understand what people are trying to do with it, inform where the risks are, and actually start to feed back into that narrative for the community is really important.
And if you could sum up the event in one word, what would you say?
Oh, engaging.
That's brilliant. And look, from where you're standing, of course, securing systems is important, technologies and human. What do you think is easier to do, securing tech or securing human beings?
Well, I think they're both valuably important because obviously I've got a bit of an AI tilt, and so security around AI models is very important. It is currently a very big risk and vulnerability that needs to be managed and controlled. But there is an aspect of this where the human is always in the system. They're a part of that mechanism for how you control access. And so being able to educate people and keep that information updated and sort of engage them again and again so that they don't slip is really important, because cyber attacks, they'll either go after the system or they'll go after the person. And so both valuable components that need to be kept updated.
And just talk us through your solution. Just give us a bit of an overview from your own perspective as to what Advai are bringing to the table within the cyber sector, and AI, of course,
and AI as well. And it's this kind of hybrid thing these days. But within the cyber sector, I mean, what we tend to do is we look at security, information, and privacy within sort of AI systems. But our particular speciality is, and the reason we're called Advai is actually it's through a technology called Adversarial AI. And so what we're able to do is we can take sort of information and we can use that to stress AI models and systems and sort of create behaviors and outcomes that are unintended for the application. And so by being able to effectively push these systems in certain directions, measure where they break, measure where that behavior changes, we use that information to be able to define the risk thresholds for how you can then inform your controls. So really sort of our speciality is actually how we can leverage information to change the behavior of AI systems.
And what's your vision for the future?
Well, I think the big thing that everyone's talking about is Agentic at the moment. The reason that's so important is because it is such a shift in terms of how we incorporate new technology into traditional architectures.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be a big shift and an increase in terms of sort of how Agentic AI is adopted and how that will change what businesses try and automate. So I think there's a huge opportunity in the value of sort of how we can integrate new technology, how we can incorporate it, but in the same ways as with the early days of the internet, a whole new protocol stack has emerged. You've got agent-to-agent communication, MCP servers, agent-to-payment communication. This is all a new level of challenge and vulnerability, and so it's effectively we're seeing this transition to a new stack that's going to be incorporated in day-to-day running of businesses.
No, that's brilliant, and I'm really curious to learn a bit more about your clientele, for instance. What sort of organisations are you helping at the moment, and what does success look like?
Yeah, so I mean, we're, for an AI company, we're rather unusual because we're a bootstrapped company, but we've done that through working with customers within defence, government, security, and financial services. And so that last bit, sort of as we go into the regulated industries, we're dealing with, say, both the regulators and the enterprise organisations. And coming from defence and government, that is sort of a large organisation with a lot of complexities, interdependencies, and sometimes very challenging sort of use cases that they need to work with. So I think unusually we started with the hardest and then have slowly been trying to move to slightly easier industries to kind of expand how this problem is addressed and solved.
I mean, Chris, a huge thank you. It's been a relatively condensed interview, and we may speak to you again in a future episode and do a little bit more of a deep dive on yourself and Advai. I think there's a lot to unpack, but for today's session, this is something that I'm sure our community, all our listeners, will find a great deal of value in. And we've managed to avoid the bagpipers as well.
I know, they were going around for a while,
I'm waiting for at some point today. So fingers crossed the sounds come out okay, and we'll look forward to including you on our ICE Special Edition live podcast.
Well, I mean, a pleasure to have the pleasure of your company, and thank you for having me on the podcast. So
thank you, Chris.
Appreciate it.
Cheers now.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jefferson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. Today we're at the International Cyber Expo in Olympia and we're joined by Katie. Katie, do you mind giving us a high-level overview of who you are and what brings you here today?
Absolutely. I'm Katie Barnett. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity for Toro Solutions. We are a converged security consultancy that specialise in cyber, physical and people security, which encompasses investigations. And the reason for that is that your criminal or your threat actor will take the path of least resistance, right? And that might be exploiting a cyber vulnerability, it might be walking into your property, your premises, or most likely it will also encompass socially engineering your staff. So Toro operates on the basis that we are the defenders that think like attackers. We will break into your buildings, we will hack your systems, and we will scam your staff and work out where the vulnerabilities are. And that's why we need specialism across all of those disciplines. And that way we're not working in silos, because most of the time we find that's where the vulnerabilities are. The gaps between cyber and physical security, with people often being the weakest link. And so we need to be holistic in our approach to defend against those attackers.
That sounds fascinating. I do commend you on that approach. A lot of organisations, especially MSPs for instance, focus on certain areas, and there is that friction between the physical systems and digital systems, and the teams as well, break down in communication. And look, we're at the International Cyber Expo. How are you finding it, and what brought you here as a business?
We're having a great time. We've had loads of traffic to our stand, which is good. One of the things we like about events like this is the opportunity for collaboration. Because we've got the physical security specialty as well as the cyber security, having both of those domains under the same roof is brilliant, because it means that we can network with people who are experts across all those areas, and we can try and bring a converged approach to more people, because ultimately we think that's what security needs to be all about, and that's why we like this event particularly.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And look, I appreciate you work with a range of clients and customers across industry. What are some of the key frustrations you're seeing, and what are some of the challenges organisations are facing, and ultimately, how are you helping them overcome those challenges?
So, a lot of the challenges are the gaps between the cyber and the physical domains. So within businesses, your decision makers, your budget holders, for cybersecurity, for physical security, for people, personnel, are not the same. And although they might be working towards a common goal or a business objective, they can be quite siloed in their approach. And from a security perspective, that's a weakness. So we're very much trying to work with those clients to help them speak the language of their business, to expose the vulnerabilities that exist across those different disciplines, and open up the conversation that they might need to have with their counterparts, that they might need to present to their boards to better enable the business. So one of the ways that we might do that is by red teaming. So Toro was born out of creating the UK's first red teaming methodology. Our CEO, Peter Connolly, he's ex-military. A lot of ex-military go into security, so that's probably no surprise. But what he did is develop this methodology and test hundreds of organizations. And that's where he discovered that actually the vulnerabilities were almost always the gaps between cybersecurity and physical security, with people as the overlay. So when we red team with our clients, we will hack their systems, break into their buildings, socially engineer their staff, and then record that information in a way that can be used to train the employees, but also to present back to the senior leadership or the board how they are vulnerable. And then we present that in terms of business impact, business consequence, cost.
That's brilliant.
And when you can do that, you've suddenly got the decision maker's attention, and you can help them prioritize how to protect their critical assets. Because ultimately you can't secure everything, especially different companies, different industries, different ways of working, whether you've got lots of physical offices, whether everyone works remote, or whether you've got some kind of hybrid setup, whether you're UK based or global. Having those security controls that are 100% effective all the time is just not possible. So helping businesses prioritize what their critical assets are, the things that they need to protect at all costs, the things that if they were leaked or if the criminals got access to them, whether that's intellectual property or sensitive data, whether it's systems that if they were ransomwared would put that business out of operation, as we've seen with Jaguar Land Rover, and damage a whole supply chain, a whole ecosystem, and then prioritize your controls from there. And those controls will be cross-discipline. They will be cyber, they will be physical, and almost always, most importantly, they will be people and security culture.
And on that, from your experience personally, and I appreciate each organisation is different, what do you find easier, securing humans or securing the tech?
The tech, 100%.
And why is that?
Well, you can have all the technical controls in the world, but at the end of the day, you've still got a human being sitting between the keyboard and the chair, and they will have the keys to the castle to some extent or another. And people, by their nature, want to trust. And because of that, they can be exploited. Whether that's tailgating into a building because someone politely opens the door for you, or whether that's being scammed into giving over your credentials because of a phishing email or a convincing looking website, human beings still hold the key, and therefore they are the way to manipulate your way into that company's critical assets.
Yeah, and I think we've all fallen fault to these things. I know personally, holding the door open for someone is something I always do. In offices, I try not to do it.
Well, that's it, and we're not trying to say be rude, right? It's nice to be polite, and I think it's just creating a culture where it's okay to challenge.
Yeah.
If you don't recognize that person as working with you, it should be okay to say, sorry, did you have your access pass today? Or even what department are you in? You know, who's your team?
I always find out,
who are you working with? Yeah, how can I help you? Exactly. It doesn't have to be obstructive or an adversarial way of managing security, but it is creating a culture of awareness, because your people can be your weakest link or your strongest asset. And we place a really great emphasis on people and culture because we know that.
Oh, that's great. And not asking you to disclose anything confidential, but have there been any mistakes in the last 12 months that you could share with us? Any stories, any disasters?
No, I wouldn't say mistakes or disasters. I think one of the things I've learned over working in IT predominantly for almost 20 years now is preparedness. So if we are implementing a project, really 90% should be in the preparation and 10% in the execution. And sometimes when you're working with technical people, that can be challenging because they can get so bogged down in the detail that asking them to think 10 steps ahead is difficult. So you need the right combination of skills on the team to help, and the right experience as well. So we've been fortunate enough to work with clients who have undergone a lot of change. So getting a lot of experience in, you know, whether it's a migration, whether it's an office move, whether it's travel or setting up offices in new locations geographically, globally. And so thinking of all the aspects that you might need to consider before it becomes a problem can help prevent those crises or those mistakes. It's not to say it won't happen, obviously, but having a plan, and having good communication. Actually, it almost always comes back to communication. You can't prepare for everything, but if something goes wrong, knowing who to communicate with and how frequently to communicate will almost always save you.
Does practice make perfect in terms of tabletop exercises?
Yeah.
Is running fire drills with not just
Exactly. If you think about a fire drill is a great example, because that's something that has been drilled into us since day dot, when we're at school, when we're in the workplace, when we are renting an office somewhere. That emergency fire alarm testing is something that we're very familiar with, and it becomes muscle memory. What to do when that happens, where to go, where to assemble, what register to take. And if you apply that same principle to incident management, whether it's a cybersecurity incident or a physical security incident, having that tabletop exercise, that crisis management practice can really help prepare businesses for any kind of emergency. Having those checklists to guide you when you're in the heat of the moment, you think you might be prepared for anything, but actually placing an individual in extremely stressful situations can make it really hard to remember everything that you think you know. Practicing does make it more muscle memory and will make a team more effective in an incident scenario.
And you've led teams, of course, given your position now at the moment, I'm sure you're in a high pressurized environment as well, and you don't just take on the pressure of your own organisation, but those of your partners. How do you maintain balance and well-being personally, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a great question. I think having worked in IT for a long time, it has really helped with my own resilience. People become frustrated when things don't work. I'm sure we've all had an experience where we've wanted to throw our phone out the window or our computer against the wall. And I have had people who have physically done that in the heat of the moment. And what you learn is that allowing yourself to get worked up will never help that situation. So I think in the first instance, just taking a deep breath and just walking it through really calmly, and putting yourself in the shoes of the person or persons that you're trying to help.
That makes sense.
They're really frustrated because they don't know why this problem has occurred, or they don't know what to do in that situation. And just having a calm approach to, where is my checklist of things that I need to run through, to just work through the problem systematically and approach a solution in a calm way will then sort of de-escalate the situation. From a personal perspective, it's really important to make sure that I get enough exercise and I get outside every day, even if that's just walking the dog.
Is that intentional? Do you sort of plan that into your schedule ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, I have a dog, so he needs walking every day.
What's his name?
His name is Lockie.
Hey, Lockie.
So that helps because there's always an incentive to get out of the house. And yeah, I mean, I go to the gym, I do exercise classes, and for me, that's my way of kind of de-stressing, and it's something that I would always encourage members of the team to do. At Toro, we do really value the well-being of our staff, so we make contributions to gym memberships or well-being subscriptions if people like to use apps, maybe for meditation or sleep stories or things like that.
That's good. It's encouraging to hear, because a lot of organisations unfortunately reward people with alcohol, and it's detrimental on their health. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a drink now and again, but rewards need to, if a business has put something in place, it needs to help that individual, like you said, gym access, wellbeing apps, that those certainly tick those boxes.
Social interaction as well, I think, is really important. At the end of the day, human beings need to interact with other human beings, and there's a sliding scale of how much social interaction people need to feel good. And understanding that different people operate in different ways is also really important, especially working in an industry of security professionals or technical professionals. A lot of the time they might be more introverted than others. And coming to an event like this is really interesting because we've invited a lot of our team to come and be on the stand. And for some of them, it really is outside of the comfort zone. Being in front of people, talking about what they do, when usually they might be sitting behind the computer. But it's important to test your boundaries a little bit and just put yourself outside of your comfort zone to help build that resilience that we spoke about.
Yeah, and it's certainly a growth exercise. Softer skills is certainly something, as a recruiter, we've been speaking about for a long time now, and we've certainly seen a shift in organisations wanting individuals that have got the ability to listen, learn and influence, for instance. And there are brilliant technical individuals that do amazing things, incredible things, but to your point, sometimes they do limit themselves because they are hidden away.
Yeah, but that's where you need people to bridge the gap, because you can't force people to be something that they're not.
How do you find that balance? Sorry to interject.
Well, it's about understanding different personalities actually, and trying to make sure that when you hire, you are hiring diversity. And it's difficult because naturally we hire in our own image, even subconsciously. But using things like personality tests, maybe the color wheel, and recognizing that people have different strengths and you do need balance to run a company effectively, to run a team effectively, and recognizing that in yourself as well, so that you can try and balance out the other members of the team. And you might push them slightly towards other areas of that personality spectrum, but you're not going to change who they are. So you need to recognize that you might have someone who is incredibly skilled at certain things, maybe they're very technical, but you need to be able to translate what they're doing to the needs of the business, whether that's internally or for one of our clients. And actually it's those translation skills which are key, because as we spoke about earlier, you've got to contextualize against the business objectives. And unless you're directing the efforts of that incredibly skilled person in the right direction, it might be going to waste. And so you do need to look at that bigger picture to create a balance and be proportionate. We are security professionals that live and breathe security all day, every day. And I think it's easy to forget that other people don't.
Yeah, and you're working for a business that's got its own goals as opposed to being an MSSP. I know you guys' goals are, but some individuals are internal for financial services groups, for instance, and they see their function as a business, but ultimately you're a business enabler.
That's it. And that's exactly what we would like to promote, that security and IT should be a business enabler. If I can't think of a company that doesn't need a computer, so don't tell me that you're not an IT company. And yet IT is very rarely the focus for a company that is delivering something else, whether it's products or services in another area. So we need to understand, as the security company or the managed service provider, what our client is trying to achieve, and make sure that security supports that and promotes that and doesn't hinder it. And it is a careful balance. You've got to understand what their objectives are and what their threats are, whether it's criminals or nation state who might be interested in what they're doing and what that threat looks like, and then help them protect against it without stifling what they're doing, whether it's creativity or efficiency. and hopefully the benefit will pay off. But it's kind of like insurance.
Yeah, it's
you
good
don't
to have
need
until you
it,
need
yeah, until something goes wrong.
And for our audience, how would you best define or differentiate between a threat and a vulnerability? And why should organisations in this day and age be focused on the threats as opposed to vulnerabilities?
Oh, you've asked the wrong person that. My colleague Gavin is very academic when it comes to terminology. I think for me, the threat is the potential. We know that the threats are out there in the form of criminal actors or nation-state parties or those acting on their behalf. How they are executing that threat might be to leverage a vulnerability. So the vulnerability is a weakness, either a technical weakness in a system because maybe the software is out of date, or there's a 0-day that needs to be patched, or a vulnerability in process, people, or physical, right? What we spoke about earlier, people tailgating into a building or propping the emergency exit door open, that's a vulnerability. Or a vulnerability in process when you're paying invoices and you don't have checks and balances to make sure that that invoice has legitimate payment details in it and requires a second line of approval, for instance. So the vulnerabilities will already exist and they are weaknesses that need to be fixed, whereas the threats are all the evolving and emerging threats that we need to be aware of so that those vulnerabilities aren't exploited.
That's a great explanation, I appreciate it. And just to add to that, I think as well, what we see differentiation is that the threats are the things that are going on that's relevant to the organisation.
Yeah.
The vulnerabilities, of course, are across the board, and you can use the threat intelligence to identify what those potential threats look like for an organisation.
Yeah.
And look, going back to your team and being a leader yourself, I'm just curious, how important is delegation and empowerment of your team members?
Delegation is very important because we can't do everything and we will burn out if we try. And I think everyone has probably experienced this. If you have any self-motivation and pride in the work that you do, you want to try and do it all, but you can't. So surrounding yourself with good people and building a good team of diverse experts is absolutely key to success. Working out where your strengths are, but also where your weaknesses are, so that you can bolster those with strengths from other people.
Yeah.
I will always look to hire people better than me. I'm not so proud to think that I know everything and can do everything. In fact, I know it's quite the opposite. And I think it's important to be humble enough to recognize the talent of others for your collective success and not try and hinder anyone else's progression for fear of your own sort of talent or position being compromised.
That's great. Appreciate you sharing. And how do you think that we can make the industry a bit more inclusive and accessible? Appreciate we are bringing underrepresented groups into the industry, and we're having that diversity of thought, which of course it builds resilience for our organisations. But you still certainly see that numbers are down.
Yeah.
I feel like they're moving in the right direction. But what more can we do as an industry right now? What can other leaders do, and how can we motivate people to enter the industry and retain them?
There is a skills shortage, that much is clear. And I think we've got to start at a really young age. We've got to show that there are role models for young children across all areas of society, all backgrounds, male, female. Get girls and boys interested in technology, in maybe security as well, and demonstrate that there's such a variety of career opportunities off the back of that.
And could you share with us perhaps a career pathway? One of your team members, for instance, or a typical, just so the audience, if there's people tuning in that haven't got to understand the cyber, what would a career pathway look like for them? What would opportunity look like within your business or your team potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably quite a good example in that I haven't taken a traditional route to get here. So I studied politics at uni. I did a law conversion. I worked in IT as a hobby job, really, during summer holidays from university. I trained and qualified as a commercial solicitor, and then immediately decided that I didn't want to be a lawyer and actually preferred my job when I was working in IT, which I'd never considered as a serious career choice before, and went back into IT, worked on an IT help desk, moved into IT projects and then IT management, and then expanded that into security before I moved from an in-house role where I oversaw IT and security into a consultancy role where I now get to work with lots of different clients across lots of different types of industry in applying those IT and security principles. So I think that's a great example that you don't necessarily need lots of technical qualifications to have a technical career, because actually some of those transferable skills that I learned doing other things have really benefited me in getting to this position, because I can understand lots of complex information. I can simplify that and communicate that with my colleagues and my clients. I can map out vast quantities of systems and assets and try to make sense of it. And I think having a broader range of experience is really beneficial in an industry like this.
I certainly agree with you. You really had a fascinating journey, and that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to bring that up as well. I think it's certainly going to resonate with a lot of individuals that are part of our community and tune in.
It's not to say that if you study IT or cybersecurity or go down a physical security or risk management route, that won't set you up well for a career too. But I think any experience is good experience. If you can understand the business that you get the opportunity to work in and the different things that make that business tick, the different functions that enable it to run, because you need all of them. You need IT, you need finance, you need HR, you need the operational teams that deliver the product or service that you're producing, and having that broader understanding will enable you to apply whatever discipline it is you choose to specialize in the context of the business, and ultimately that will make you more successful.
That's brilliant. And are there perhaps 2 or 3 pros and 2 or 3 cons of working in cyber that you can share with us?
The pros are that it's really interesting. Cybersecurity technology is constantly evolving. So if you are keen to keep abreast of the latest technologies, to understand the threat landscape and the things that are changing related to geopolitics or technology, software, then you will never get bored in this space. The opportunity to help protect businesses and people, at the end of the day, these are all about people. And as much as I've spoken about businesses, we do also help individuals. Almost every week we're contacted by someone who's been scammed or defrauded, and whatever context that's in, it can be really traumatizing for the people involved.
I know some people don't want to admit it, that it's happened to them as well. Is that barrier in the first instance?
Absolutely, and I think there is no shame in that. The criminals are really experienced, they're really well practiced, they're really convincing, and there's no shame in admitting that something nothing bad has happened to you as long as you do something about it, and you then try and educate others to prevent it happening to them. So at the end of the day, whatever security we're employing, we are helping people, and that's really what gets us out of bed in the morning. I think the counter to that, the con, is that sometimes security is seen as a grudge purchase. Even though we are seeing examples of hacks, of breaches, of serious incidents happening in the news every day, people still think it won't happen to them. And that they don't want to invest in security to protect themselves or their business. And so convincing them that it's a good idea can be challenging. And trying to get buy-in to change habit, practice, or culture can be really difficult.
Have you got a go-to analogy when you're addressing boards or senior leaders, for instance, to demonstrate and communicate risk, for instance?
I mean, your point about risk is key, that ultimately all of this is about risk management. And so rather than use an analogy, I would be more inclined to make sure I really understood the business of the board that I was speaking to and what their priorities are, what makes them tick, either as individuals or an organization, and then contextualizing. There's nothing worse than scaremongering, and I think that's part of the problem with the headlines that we see every day. You know, hundreds of millions of records breached in data leak, hundreds of millions of pounds lost in revenue, and the numbers almost feel too big.
It's shaming.
To
It's shaming at
appreciate.
organisations, and I think as an industry we have been moving away from sort of the pointing and naming and shaming, for instance, but media is amplifying this.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when you're speaking to the board or the senior leadership, it is about prioritizing and targeting and understanding, as we said earlier, like what their critical assets are, what is the thing that would really harm them, whether it's a massive leak of personal data because they hold a huge customer database, or whether it's the intellectual property of the product that they are producing, or whether it's the safety of their staff because they are global, they might have offices in lots of different regions, maybe some of those locations are high risk, high threat. And then targeting your understanding of risk towards those critical assets and saying, look, we know that if this thing happened, it would really harm you as individuals and an organization. To protect against this thing happening, these are the key things that you need to do. And start there and take them on the journey, because you can't protect against everything. You can't implement everything 100% effectively, and trying to do so is completely overwhelming. So, like most things, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and taking them on a journey of improvement is probably the best way to achieve piecemeal improvement in security, and not make it something which is so much of a hurdle that it's just impossible to achieve.
That's some great advice, and you've articulated that brilliantly, so I do appreciate that. And before we close out the session, could you share with us perhaps a bold prediction for 2026, as well as a not so bold one? Not including AI, hopefully.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 2026 with the geopolitical situation the way it is. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, in the markets, in business. And I think, kind of coming back to one of the tips that I mentioned earlier about preparedness, being prepared for that uncertainty is the best way to approach it. Having that conversation with your senior leadership team about how you might respond to an incident will stand you in good stead because the world is so unpredictable right now. And I'm not going to make any bold predictions about what's going to happen because I don't think that's necessarily
is there
very helpful.
Optimistically that you'd love to see in 2026?
I think just everyone embracing some basic cyber hygiene. Because when we see and respond to incidents, a lot of the time it's still the basics that are falling down. It's people using weak passwords or reusing passwords that have already been included in data breaches. It's people not enabling multi-factor authentication on their accounts. And it's people not updating their devices and patching their software. So if I was going to say anything, just those three things will make you less vulnerable than the next person. So go away and do it.
I totally agree with you. And look, tell us a little bit more about the business. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience and the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love working at Toro. We are like a family. We've got loads of really talented staff members within our team. And we're really passionate about working in partnership with our clients to look at the threat landscape, identify the relevant risks, and help them build resilience. Because ultimately, it is a case of when, not if. And being prepared for that and resilient to weather the storm will give us such satisfaction as security professionals, but also hopefully enable our clients to do better in their businesses. So that's what we're looking for really in the partnerships we have with our clients. And we've got such a wide range of services that we offer. The typical client journey might start with an audit or a review, whether that's to meet a certain standard or achieve certification, whether that's cyber or physical. And then working with the clients on a security improvement program, essentially. And that might include testing, training, hopefully not incident response, but we do still work with a lot of new clients who come to us when something bad has happened and maybe we need to conduct some digital forensics. But we prefer to work much more proactively, and that's actually why we've also developed an IT managed services function and a managed security services function, because we were tired of auditing our clients and identifying that the vulnerabilities were still the basic things, and that often was that their IT teams, their IT companies weren't being proactive about management. And a lot of IT MSPs are just break fix, very reactive. So we set up our IT MSP team with security in mind, so that we are very proactive, actively monitoring, actively patching, actively contacting our clients when we see breached data, breached credentials, and helping them to rectify that. So I think in terms of Toro and the business and the team, that's our approach, that's our ethos, and those are the types of clients that we like to work in partnership with. And so we, love to work with anyone who wants to think like that too.
No, that's brilliant, and I would highly recommend Toro. I've heard from some of your actual customers and clients that there's a heavy investment in that knowledge transfer, and I do commend you and the team for that. And after having a conversation with you today, I can personally see the passion and the dedication that you have for protecting others. So certainly highly recommend reaching out to you and the team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jefferson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals. Today we're at the International Cyber Expo at Olympia, London, and we're joined by Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andrey Darinberg. I'm from radiocyber.com, and we are the software as a service platform that provides online cybersecurity and business continuity risk assessments. And we also provide tailored policies as a result of those assessments, tailored to your industry, tailored to your size, tailored to your development cycle.
That's great. And look, appreciate your service offering. It's really fascinating. We had a conversation just a moment ago, but what actually brought you here to ICE today? What were you looking to achieve, and how have you found it?
Actually, we're looking for partners to start working with. We have platform fully operational, and we have already secured a number of partnerships, and we will soon probably announce those partnerships on the LinkedIn page and on the website as well. We're having a first announcement hopefully next week. It's a pretty large company. They liked us. They would put us amongst their preferred partners, and this will be a good step forward for us, because obviously we just started as a business, but we have been around as in various bits of cybersecurity for more than 14 years.
That's impressive. And how important are events such as ICE for early stage organizations, for instance?
I think that's the only way to show yourself, apart from obviously advertising on LinkedIn, which is less personal, and you need to have a human touch and see the eyes of the people you're talking to in order to get some meaningful relationships out of that. And obviously networking is the biggest thing that can probably help you down the line, because that's how you build trust in people, and you show who you are. You actually show that you exist and you are serious on looking forward to cooperating with those people. That's, I think,
I certainly agree with you. I met a chap last year, he's a really close friend now, someone that I look up to and admire in the industry, and one of the first things he said to me when I met him last year is, he said, Warren, if you don't network, you don't get work.
Yeah, absolutely. And 100%. I think even if you start small, like, if you're a junior and you're in business, it's not that your job is promoting you, it's people who are working around you. And if they like you, you're going to go higher. If they don't like you, well, obviously you're going to stay where you're staying. And there are some people who are happy to stay just behind the computer because they like it. It's not in my case. I want to be in front of people, and I'm more of a people person rather than techie.
And has it always been like that for you?
I think I've learned the hard way. I've been an analyst in my life, and been quite successful analyst. I've been doing loads of things, and now I think I could be easily replaced by AI. And maybe ChatGPT knows much more than I used to when I was 20, but I think I learned it to speak to people and to come up to people and tell them what I'm doing and how passionate I'm about with the things I'm doing, and it's true. And if you're not passionate about what you do, there's no way that you can succeed in doing it.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to public speaking or even communicating to people,
sure,
if it's something that you are passionate about and you really care about, it's easy to contextualize it. Some people put too much pressure on the prep, for instance, and when they're trying to sell or even communicate things. And so,
yes, prep always helps, but it's not the only thing that will drive you towards people. I think the most important thing that you need to understand in networking is you need to be truly not only passionate about talking about what you do, but also interested in what other people are doing. Otherwise, they would be feeling lost, and they wouldn't like you, because obviously all you talk about is yourself, and they're left out, because you want to interest people in not only your product, but also in your personality and what they want to hear from you and what they would learn from you, and maybe how you can help them. Because ultimately everyone is focused about themselves first, and then the other people. So you want to understand what actually is driving the other person to get to you and to talk to you.
Oh, and it's something that I always say to any founders that I meet with, you're given 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice.
Listen carefully.
And look, from where you're stood in the industry, what are some of the key frustrations and challenges that you're seeing, and how are you working or hoping to work towards address those challenges?
That's a very good question. So the reason why I've started that with my co-founder is that there was a big. I was big in cybersecurity consulting. I spent a lot of time developing cybersecurity consultancies, building businesses, and I understand that there are jobs in cybersecurity that don't really bring you a lot of success, and they're required because you need to do them, but that's only a first step in actually understanding what your client actually needs and what kind of services you need to sell them. So risk assessments take into account that. For example, they take a lot of time, normally a week. They take a lot of effort from sometimes junior consultants that do those jobs, and the partners normally don't go to those meetings. They just take into granted what the juniors are bringing them, and it's the most cumbersome work done both for cybersecurity consultants and business, because you take a lot of time from business. You take different interviews with people who don't want to talk about cybersecurity. They're involved with something else, but you try to get that information from you that is valuable to you, but they don't want to listen to you. They'd rather speak with other people, and so that was the idea that came to us, that we want to take this insecurity out of cybersecurity. The first step, you want to do it as automated as possible, and AI can help you with that. Even chatbot that we put on the platform, it's AI chatbot that will deliver certain things if you ask it to. And for us, cybersecurity consultancy part of risk assessment is 40 to 50 minutes of clicking through, and you can actually do the simple language toggle that even a COO or CEO of a company that is not focused on tech would understand. And click, 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 and then the report comes out, and the report is prepared for your board of directors. It has really nice graphics. It has actionable insights.
How long does that report take to generate in comparison to traditional methods?
So 50 minutes is click through for cybersecurity questionnaire. And as I said, language toggle there. You can switch it to normal plain English. And the report itself generates within 1 minute. And it's normally 22 to 25 pages of really good graphics, strategic insights, scenario that you have selected for yourself in terms of a budget. I have this budget, show me what I can do. Actionable insights, 3-year roadmap, KPIs that you need to focus on, governance structures that you need to build. And that gives you a solid foundation to building cybersecurity on top of that.
That's fascinating. And from your perspective, could you share with us perhaps a success story from some of your work that you've done previously, and what you're hoping to sort of leave in terms of legacy and impact on the industry? For instance, if you were to look back 10 years from now, how do you want to look back on yourself?
That's a good question, because 10 years from now I was building forms in Word to auto-populate policies, policy templates, and auto-populate risk assessment forms to make sure that it is done more easily. Then we moved on to iPads that you click through to populate the questions, but you still do a lot of typing, you still do a lot of manual labor. That was very cumbersome. So when I was building that technically, there was a client who asked me to basically give him a report within an hour, and you can't have that done in a normal environment where you're doing the questions and answers. So I said, okay, let's do this, because the platform is not yet ready, but let's try. And within an hour, he had a beautiful report with a PDF that he brought onto the board of directors. The board of directors said, yes, fine, you have the budget. So that, I think, for me, that's a success story that I'm willing to share with everyone, and that's a true story, and that's a fact. And I think the person who might listen to this would smile, because yes, that was actually the story behind the first success that we had, even before we launched the platform in September.
That's brilliant. And 10 years from now, if the business does go on the trajectory that you're hoping it to blow, what do you want to be looking back on in terms of where you stand and the contribution that you and the business have had to society or the industry, for instance?
Well, I'm hoping that I'll be smiling at myself 10 years from now, what I was before, the same way I'm smiling with me doing the auto-populating policies and auto-populating the questionnaires, because I think we're on the verge of this quantum leap in cybersecurity where AI would be truly magnificent change to the industry. And yes, a lot of people might find it that it would be harder for junior analysts or junior cybersecurity analysts to start their way in cybersecurity because the AI would be obviously taking some part of their work. But in my understanding, it would all be about innovation. It will all be about the things that AI at this point of time cannot really do. It cannot make up new things. It cannot do something that has not yet been introduced on the market. So I'm really hoping that this will happen, and I'm hoping Radio Cyber will be on the forefront of this innovation 10 years from now even. So that's my biggest hope.
No, that's great. And I know you're finding teams a 50-50 split between male and female. How can we make the industry more inclusive?
Well, I think we would need to ask my co-founder, who is not in this shot right now, but I think there's so much that men and women can generate together, because there's no need for just a technical component of the idea to be present. There's also bounces about different ideas, and because we're all people from different backgrounds and we've worked in different companies and we have seen different things, different clients, and we talk to different people, that it's a merge of brains that create something, an experience that creates something magnificent. And I'm really hoping that we're going to be speaking of this in 10 years from now, and we'll be talking the same way, but not about the computers, but about people who would be generating those new ideas, new businesses. And yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter which background you have. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you have new idea, that's the source of development of the business.
And on the people side of things, there's a question we've been asking a lot of attendees today. What's easier to secure, humans or tech?
Tech is simpler. Humans are much more complicated, and it's much harder to find a good person, a good employee, than to find a good tool. Because it all normally takes about a demo on 1 hour, maybe, then doing something on your own for a day or two to identify a good tool. But it takes maybe half a year to understand whether you have made the right choice about the person. And even then, you don't really know where this person is going to get you to where you want to be. Because it's not you who is always selecting you're not just selecting the hands or a brain, you're selecting a person, and you're going with that person, you're building the business with that person. Irrespective of whether that's a co-founder or employee who has stock options or not, it doesn't really matter. Every single person is adding to your company. If you don't make the right decision about that person, and about the positioning of that person and development of that person, I think you're not going to go far, even if you're a really, really large company. And we've seen those stories with how key people who are leaving the business sometimes bring business down because they're not happy with the business, and business doesn't really know that those were the key people for that. And I've seen quite a few things in my life when this happened.
And as a sort of former leader of a consulting firm, for instance, how important is delegation?
Oh, very important. But you need to trust people. First of all, you need to not just throw them at the client. You need to train them really well. You have to select them really well. They need to train them really well. They need to incentivize them well, because they need to care about the job that they do. Not just interview because that's what you're supposed to do, or deliver a report because that's what you're supposed to do. You need to care about the client. You need to really be passionate about the thing that you do. So yeah, it's really important.
And look, something that we always talk about with senior leaders is well-being. You know, some leaders have been or are at the verge of burnout, for instance, and it is a high pressurized environment, the security industry. And you, as a founder and a co-founder, for instance, I know there's a lot of weight on your shoulders as well. And there's perhaps sometimes we all face unconscious bias, for instance. So how do you sort of balance your well-being and avoid being burnt out? Is there anything you can share with the audience in terms of tips and tricks?
I think the most important bit is at some point of time you need to stop and just not do what you're doing. Yeah. Because if you do 24/7 behind the laptop and you're talking to people 24/7, you're going to make mistakes. And those mistakes will be frustrating, and they will definitely be frustrating not only for you but for the business as well. And you need to shut off from the business, and you need to do the exercise, go for a walk, take a dog for a walk, go enjoy your family. That's important, because not only the job that matters and not only the money that you can work, that you can make, it's also your family and your loved ones, or the closed ones, are an important part of your business, of your life and your business. If you don't deliver to them what they expect from you, or you compromise on doing too many things and not dedicate tasks to other people who can do them better than you need to understand there's a lot of people who can do better than you. And you need to build the trust, and you need to build a business out of that. There's a human component is the most important component of any business, because we're all humans.
No, I certainly agree with you in that respect. And is there any advice and guidance you could give to those that are looking to enter the cybersecurity industry, as well as those that are perhaps looking to advance their career and move into leadership positions, for instance?
Well, the first advice, try. There's no mistake in trying. Even if you make mistakes on the way, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is what you are doing, and if you're enjoying it or not. If you don't enjoy cybersecurity, don't go to cybersecurity. Go somewhere else. Go to sales. Go to be a racing driver. Be a racing driver. Be a sportsman. It doesn't really matter. If you enjoy what you do, that's the most important thing. Because if you don't like what you're doing, and 20 years passes, and you still don't like what you've been doing for those 20 years, there's no point.
I certainly agree with you. I know there's not enough hours in the day to do what I'm doing, and I get frustrated because there aren't. I get excited to get up and go to work. You know, it's having a passion for that, and I see that throughout industry. Security, once people dip their foot in, it draws you in, it drags you in.
Absolutely.
And look, as we wrap up the session, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I know you're going to be coming back in the future
and
join us, not just as a panel, but as a full guest. But is there anything you want to share with the audience, a high-level overview of the business, the type of organisations that you're looking to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. We're open to any partnership at all. We are looking for people who are also passionate about replacing some of the cumbersome jobs that maybe cybersecurity consultants do. And we're happy to cooperate with whoever is there who likes the idea of doing a lot of things with your own hands, because obviously Rate Your Cyber is all about doing things yourselves rather than relying on somebody else who you may like or may not like, who may know your business or you might know your business, might not know your business, or who is capable or not even capable of doing their jobs. We've seen a lot of those people. So it's all about you, it's all about how you think of your business, how well you want to grow your business and where you want to be with that business. And yes, please go to rateyourcyber.com, join us, talk to me, connect with LinkedIn, and let's do business together. Let's start doing something amazing out of almost nothing.
That's brilliant. Appreciate your time. And look, from all of us at Secure Cyber Connect community, we highly recommend that you check out Rate Your Cyber, and I'm sure you'll be seeing more of the team in the near future.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Warren Atkinson and Jay Adamson, where we're joined by information cybersecurity, technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives and offer advice and guidance. We're at the International Cyber Expo at Olympia, London. We're joined by Joe and Kelsey. Could you both give us a high-level overview of who you are and what's brought you here today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Kelsey Smith. I'm the Director of Sales for an organisation called Dionach. We are a cybersecurity consultancy, if I can get my words out. We've been in operation for 25 years. I am going into my 10th year with the company, so I've seen a huge amount of change, and I think I've got a lot to say about the industry, where we're going, and what we need to learn from.
Yep, and I'm Jo, GRC Client Relationship Manager, working with Kelsey and the team, and also the GRC team at Dionach. And I've been there just coming up to a year, so quite new to the business, but they've been in the industry for 25 years.
That's brilliant, and congratulations on your 10-year tenure and almost your first year anniversary with the team. So before we get into things, what brought you both to ICE today, and what were you looking to achieve, and what are your thoughts on the event itself?
Yeah, of course. So I think historically Dionach haven't really attended a huge amount of events. We've sort of grown organically through word of mouth, recommendations, but we were realising that we were sort of becoming out of touch with the latest developments, with what the consumers are wanting outside of our sort of pre-established network. So we are doing this as sort of with a little bit of an experiment, a little bit of a learning curve, and it's been an incredible experience so far, just for the sheer insights, the incredible minds that are here, and it's been something that we are definitely looking forward to doing in the future again.
And what about yourself, Joe? I know we've met at a couple of events now. What are your thoughts on ICE?
I think I've been here on a few occasions, and I think if we don't come here, I don't meet you in person. And I've bumped into loads of people that I've worked with previously, met new connections, and we've got leads, and that's about the networking for us to be seen. You've got to be seen at these types of events, and I know people say that they're dwindling off a little bit, but I still think it's important that people network in person.
Yeah, and I think it gives you the opportunity to understand the challenges that industry are facing. And I certainly think when footfall's lower, I think it cuts through the noise a little bit. The people who actually are attending have got a real purpose. They want to find out information. They want to buy. Sometimes there are people that are just window shopping, unfortunately.
Yeah, and customers come to if we're exhibiting, we've had customers come to the stand to see us and thank us for the work that we've done, actually, which has been really good.
That has been one of my favourite parts. Because we've come primarily to look at ideally new business opportunities, and as I mentioned before, looking at the wider market. But the amount of customers we've had just come up and be like, it's so great to see you guys in person. I was speaking to one of your consultants the other day, which is a great opportunity to have that face-to-face contact with them again.
Oh, that's brilliant. And look, Kelsey, you've been at the business 10 years. Has there been a mistake in your journey? And if so, what was that mistake that you made, and what was the lesson learned?
Probably many over 10 years, I will definitely say that. So coming at it from the framing of sort of I'm in sales rather than sort of the direct.
Yeah, of course,
work. So one of mine is when I first joined the industry for cybersecurity, I definitely fell into the ambulance chasing as a sales tactic. As you can imagine, that does not always go down well. You manage to every now and again get sort of a miracle opportunity where someone has responded because you happen to catch them at the right time. But I think you actually end up alienating a lot of your audience. So after a very challenging sales year of trying that approach, I realised that I had to evolve what I was doing and connect with customers on a different level. So for anyone coming into cybersecurity sales, please do not jump on the headlines. Yeah. Please do not ambulance chase or fearmonger around your customers. Instead, just transition the conversations into looking at risk and seeing where you can organically add value for them rather than sort of following the trends.
No, that's incredible. What about yourself, Joe? Have there been any mistakes that you've made in your career? Has there been any hard lessons that you'd like to share with the audience?
Do you know, I was thinking about this because obviously you preempted us on these questions. I've had quite a lot of mistakes, but a cyber-related mistake was I once clicked on a phishing simulation, and it was an encrypted email that had been sent to me, and I had a customer that sent me encrypted emails. So I emailed the customer and said, have you sent me an email that's encrypted? And he replied, yes. So I clicked on it, and it was luckily it was a simulation. And I was like, but I checked, I did the checks, I checked that he'd emailed me, but when I thought about it afterwards, it was like, I didn't actually say when did you send me the email. It was at this time, so I think lessons learned, especially when I've worked in this industry for all this, I was gutted, but it was a lesson learned.
No, I appreciate you sharing. I think it's something that we've all done at a certain point. So I speak to a lot of CISOs, for instance, and they've clicked their own stuff.
I forgot to send it out,
And look, obviously, you both converse with industry leaders, people that I would say that are our peer group. What are some of the key frustrations and challenges that you're seeing within industry, and ultimately, what are you and as a team doing to sort of address those challenges?
I've got a list, but to try and keep it refined, one of the challenges I've seen in our industry for the past couple of years is a variation in language. What is a recognised penetration test for one organisation, and they're calling it by the same name in another, may 9 times out of 10 end up being a vulnerability assessment. And I think just the language that we use as an industry is currently competing between sort of the academic path from cybersecurity versus the people who were network engineers on the ground and have come through with 25 years experience now, and what they have just developed organically. And I think we see a lot of the time frustrations because those languages aren't always exactly the same, and that's when misunderstandings can happen. So that's one for mine. I've now got into the habit of going, when you ask for pen testing, for cybersecurity consultancy, what specifically is your understanding of that, to make sure that I can align with them?
I appreciate sharing. I see the lines being blurred between red teaming as well. A lot of people saying they do red teaming, but it's effectively a pen test.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the stakeholder engagement with cybersecurity. I still don't think we're there.
No.
With all the breaches that have happened recently, I was at an event in Leeds last week, and that raised awareness again with the stakeholders at certain organisations, but they're not opening a blank checkbook, but they still don't understand, because before that happened, they still had trouble in asking, we need to do this, can we do that? So I think there's still that exact level of misunderstanding what they need to be doing.
With that in mind, what can we do more as an industry to help the executives and help those that don't see security as a priority, for instance?
I don't know, because I think we've been trying for years. Every single customer, you've got to get the buy-in from the board to be able to do stuff. If you want to run security awareness programs, it's got to come from the top down. Good behaviours have to come from the top down, and I don't think they see it as their problem.
Yeah.
So I struggle to think, what can we do? Have you heard of any other?
No, where I've seen success is just
struggle.
Telling the stories, making sure it resonates, and being consistent, just showing up. I feel that everything that's going on in the industry across the world with attacks, it's sometimes just a harsh reminder. But I think if just back to back, I feel that something really, really big is going to have to happen for the UK in particular to sort of shake things up. And hopefully AI is going to be a big driver for that. Perhaps a data center gets attacked, taken offline, one big one. Utilities providers, I know that's a big target at the moment, especially for investing in AI. There's going to be a need for water treatment and energy. And nation states, if they do want to cripple us, that's going to be something that's going to be a prime target.
It's the what if, so they need to ask themselves, what happens if we do get breached? Because some will go, we make tea, why do people want to hack us, or we make paper plates? Everybody's data is important. It's not just about breaching the company, it's the data that they're stealing from the company. So
it's a way in as well. Some businesses are just suppliers of X, Y, and Z, and they want to get into the systems so that they can get access. And yes, as you mentioned, unfortunately, people aren't being proactive; they're being reactive in the systems.
I think the public in the UK as well, because there are data breaches in the media every second day now, probably even more prominently. I think as an individual, you become desensitized. Oh no, another breach has happened, it's fine. I am a tiny, tiny little sample of data, not huge amount. Mm-hmm. So you don't think that you're going to have an impact, and I think people have stopped valuing their own data in the same way. And I think as an industry, it's really disappointing that I do think you're right, it's going to take something major to get everybody to sort of unify and call everything out and really put action forward.
I certainly agree with you. And look, tell me a bit more about the business. Tell me about your solutions, the type of customers that you're helping, and what does the future hold?
Yeah, of course. So at Dionach, we sort of offer a range of services under 3 primary pillars. So we offer a range of assurance services that's looking at red teaming, at penetration testing, and we're really, really getting stuck into a number of AI sort of assurance services as well now. It is the buzzword of the moment. We also then offer a huge suite of GRC services. So we're looking at cybersecurity frameworks, we're helping organizations sort of, adopt things like ISO 27001, ISO 42001, and just helping them in their sort of cybersecurity journeys and road mapping what they need to be doing in a way that is tailored for them and their circumstances.
Yeah.
And then sort of one of the final pillars is just looking at incident response. So we offer incident response retainers, we can do forensic investigations. Pretty much if you have a cybersecurity challenge and you go, oh my gosh, who do I need to call? Who do I need to speak to? I've just described us like the Ghostbusters.
When there's something strange in your network.
Cybersecurity. We're going to have to get a song.
Called Kelsey.
And Joe, can you tell me a success story for the business where you've added value to your clients, where you've supported them? Appreciate you can't disclose anything confidential.
No, I think, I'm obviously new. I've been there, coming up to a year, but I've brought new business in, which is great, and we've been able to deal with it quickly, so the availability that we've had, so that's been a success. The team are getting busier. It's just great because they're a great team. I know I'm biased because I work there, but they are genuinely a great team. They want to help people. We don't like the hard sales pitch, even though we're here to sell, but we want to help. So what's the problem? Even if we can offer advice, we'll help in any way we can. So I think for the success, the team's really successful, some great opportunities, and we've got some really good customers that appreciate the work that we do.
That's good to hear. And are there any sort of ICP, so ideal client profile or customer profiles? What types of organisations do you prefer to work with?
I mean, where we're seeing the most success and where we're providing the most impact at the moment is organisations who are feeling the pressure of the cybersecurity skills gap. We know that that's a prevalent issue across the UK. We have a fantastic team of specialists who can drop in and out of your requirements, whether that's as a CISO, whether that's supporting in your penetration testing activities, helping you coordinate those activities, or helping you develop your strategies. We're really at the front of that challenge and of that journey. And in terms of sort of the organisations that we work well and we're very closely aligned to, the financial sector is, so heavily regulated. We're almost translators for them in terms of what they need to be doing and when and how they can approach it. And we're also doing more and more at the moment within the aviation sector as well. As we know, that is always going to be sort of a peak industry for cybersecurity requirements, and that's something that we're helping sort of develop different service for and just open up conversations and see where we can provide support.
No, that's brilliant.
We do a lot of work with the NHS as well, so that'd be great to point out.
I think we've worked with them for so long that sometimes I'm like, we're part of the NHS now, surely.
We'll have to have a conversation after this recording, actually. I've got something for you. With the industry in mind, of course, I often go to academia, universities, clusters, and I speak on people that are entering the industry. I always highlight account management, sales, of course, customer success as a non-technical route into a technical role, because of course you spend a lot of time with the engineers. With yourselves, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you ladies have picked up along the way. So before I go on to the next question, how can we make the industry more accessible for underrepresented groups, and what other career pathways should be women, for instance, looking at?
I think there's definitely something that we need to address as an industry in terms of sort of women coming through, whether that's sort of looking at how we do recruitments, the graduate programs that we're putting in place. That is something I'm super passionate about and wanting to see more women specifically in the technical roles across cybersecurity. But in terms of sort of first coming into the industry, I think start approaching local businesses that are in the cybersecurity industry. You'll find that they are all actually incredibly friendly, and we want to encourage that next generation of talent because of the skills gap that we're seeing. And then further to that as well, don't be intimidated by the lack of technical knowledge. I was in event planning before I started coming into cybersecurity. Apparently having a very logical, methodical mind works really well in translation. Look at the skills you've got and then think about how else you can be applying them. The learning curve is quite steep, but when you're with a good company, they give you all of the support that you need. And I'd also say to people as well, specifically for sort of the sales element, it is probably the most villainized and glamorized role And I think you just need to go into it, if you enjoy speaking with people, it will be something that you can really get a huge amount of enjoyment from. And if you want to help organisations in their journeys, if you want to improve security, if you want to make an impact in the UK in terms of how can we protect the population, this is the new sort of battlefront that we're on. It is in cybersecurity.
No, I certainly agree. I think the pandemic itself highlighted that massively for me personally as well. I noticed, although I was working in cyber, I noticed how wide-reaching that was, especially with younger children, for instance. And with that in mind, Joe, how can we arm parents, carers, and teachers with the knowledge to perhaps empower children, not just to say that they've got stronger online safety etiquette, but also encourage them to come into the STEM arena and cybersecurity with proxy?
Yeah, I think I just want to pick up on what Kelsey was saying about the women in cybersecurity, because come to these events, connect with people on LinkedIn that are in cyber, because there's a lot of people out there that would be willing to help, be a mentor, connect you with the people that you wouldn't have the opportunity to meet. And I've done that with some people that I know, and message people myself saying, would you connect with this person? They're looking to do this. And I try and give them advice myself. So there's an event on in Leeds, or there's an event in Manchester, get yourself there. And if you don't want to go on your own, take somebody with you, because once you get there, people actually will talk. But going back to your question about the schools, I mean, when I was at school, we didn't have access to laptops and things like that. So I think the schools are making it accessible. I mean, there are subjects now, they're teaching them how to code. There's lots of opportunity, I think, out there for kids to do this, but maybe the mentors go into schools and do talks, invite us to go speak to the kids and say, talk about how we got where we are, and, not all is lost, because none of us started out in cyber. You happen to fall upon it unless you know exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, most definitely. I think my personal journey getting cyber, I've been a recruiter for 15 years now. The first 6 were engineering, manufacturing, food and drink, energy, and it's helping the organisations with their operational, keeping the businesses and the conveyor lines and the energy systems up and running. And then I think it was going back 6 years ago now, they asked if I could help them security engineers. So usually it was just maintenance engineers. Like, that's not a problem. And then bridging the gap between IT and OT, it's a challenge for a lot of organisations. But back to your point earlier, there's plenty of opportunity for people to retrain and redeploy, especially if you've got a business understanding and you've got strong communication skills.
Even, a lot of ex-military work in cyber because they understand the security.
Yeah.
So, I know there's programs for ex-military, people take them in to do, work experience. If you know somebody that works in cyber, just say, come and sit with me for the day and you can see what I do, I've done that as well, just trying to help people be part of that journey.
And are there any career pathways that you can identify and sort of highlight in terms of the benefits of that career pathway and perhaps the harsh reality?
Oh, I might have to think about this.
I don't think I could.
I haven't prepped for this. Where have I done?
What would be the typical career path for someone who wants to join your business as a sales rep, for instance, or an account manager?
Yeah, cool. So we tend to get people in either as sort of a business development representative or an account manager, just depending on their comfort level, their level of experience. And from there, you tend to sort of introduce them with a small number of the services that we have. I think at present we have 40 different service lines. So we'll start off with, the bread and butter, the pen testing. Here is how you translate that into stories. People love stories. I think a lot of the time we get really, really overwhelmed by the technical language, but you realise that a lot of these things that when you're having a general conversation, people like anecdotes, they like stories, they like things that they can relate to and see themselves within and sort of draw meaning from. So I think if you actually are a bit of a good storyteller, come into cybersecurity. We need more stories on our industry to make more of an impact. And in terms of sort of that career pathway, you'll find that as you start learning about more services, you'll then likely pick up a specialism. So Jo, for instance, she's gone into sort of the governance, risk and compliance side. She understands that road mapping and strategic arm. You'll get others who start falling into assurance and they pick up specialism with red teaming and how to have those conversations with their customers. And then they sort of just evolve from there. You'll meet bigger and bigger organizations. You'll be able to then start coming up with ideas about how you evolve your services and improve them. You become technical yourself as part of the journey.
Yeah.
If I asked myself 10 years ago, here's what you're going to know down the road, here's the impact you can make, I would be flabbergasted. Like, my head would fall off going, wow, okay, never imagined myself in tech before, but look at that journey. It's not something that you're expected to know overnight, and you'll find that most organizations are really going to support you in the learning and helping you develop your own comfort zone and expertise.
No, that's brilliant. And is there anything you want to add to that? Or
Yeah, I think for me, it was like when I got into cyber, when I first started working in cybersecurity or IT, find somebody that can explain it to you in a simple way. So they've got to, somebody said, think of it in colours, red, green and blue. And I couldn't vision, the network layering. I was like, what's that mean? I said, tell me in shoes and handbags. Is it a Primark one? Is it a Jimmy Choo or is it a Louis Vuitton? So that's the way that I could understand network layering, because you've got your, I know we can't swear, but your crap at the top or crap at the bottom. So find somebody that can help you and will explain it. And it wasn't until, you then move on to something else and then somebody tells you something and it's the light bulb moment. So, and we are technical in a way. We have to be, because we need to understand what our customers technically need. So we think we're not, but we are.
And is there perhaps a in terms of working in the industry, is there a harsh reality, very briefly, even if you want to share?
Oh gosh, one of my big ones, as I mentioned earlier, sales is both glamorized and villainized. You will sometimes get the challenge of a lot of people won't want to speak to you or engage with you very much because you've got sales or commercial or something related to those preconceptions about what that journey is like. That you're
try and be a recruiter.
I honestly, you've got more than I do. And I think that sometimes that's sort of like a stigma you have to try and work within. You aren't going to change that overnight, but I do think, especially for sales and cybersecurity, we are, we're not the Del Boy pushers of things. We are really lucky to better understand our customers. We want to make an impact. We want to sell something that will add value to you. We don't want to sell you something that is, trash and isn't supportive in any way, and then you turn around in 6 months' time going, that didn't do anything for us. That's not improved our lives in any way. So that is definitely something that I see as a con in the industry, because you have to be pretty bullheaded at times and resilient to go, okay, I can keep on pushing here, because that narrative is slowly but surely, in my opinion, changing.
No, I appreciate Sharon. And from your perspective, Joe?
Do you know what? I think, once you actually start talking to people and then they understand you or they meet you in person, if you pick up the phone, they're just going to bang, why are you calling me? And it is hard. It is a hard gig. It's not for the faint-hearted, because you've got to be resilient, but genuinely I think some people actually do want to talk, and it's finding that person that gives you the time. It's, you don't want to pitch, you feel like you're sweating on the phone and just like, oh, can't deal with it, but
just want to hang out, don't you?
Yeah. And they're like, I think some people do it to intimidate you as well. So you do have to be resilient and take the knocks. But there are some nice people out there as well.
I appreciate sharing. And I know from personal experience, when I'm trying to sell, not just recruitment, but some of our partner solutions, for instance, 9 times out of 10, you're just catching someone at the wrong time. It's just about raising awareness, isn't it? And they might be having a bad day themselves as well. So if they are rude to you, just tap on the glass again.
Annoy them the second time.
I think it comes down a huge amount to emotional intelligence. I think anybody working in any type of account management, sales, recruitment role, you have to be very aware of how other people may be feeling about how they may interpret things, and you have to be able to adapt at all times to make sure that you're speaking in a way that they can understand. And as you said, having empathy. Someone might put the phone down. You don't know what their circumstances are. They might be dealing with a huge breach. They might have had something personal. They might have just had to sit in traffic for 25 minutes and they cannot be bothered to speak on the phone that day.
Road rage.
And not take it personally. Just push through, because you will one day call them up and it'll be the right time to speak to them.
And look, mental resilience is obviously something that we talk about often, especially with it being sort of a high pressurised environment, the sales aspect of it as well. I appreciate you probably working to quotas and whatnot. So from your own personal perspectives, when you are under pressure or when you face the time that you're perhaps close to burnout, how have you found balance? How have you maintained sort of that high level of mental resilience and well-being? And when I say well-being, that not just not physical and emotional, but your financial and your family life as well, of course.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of things for it. We talk a lot about the cybersecurity web and the fabric when we're speaking to our customers. I think when you are looking after yourself, you have to see it in the same capacity. There's not going to be one thing that fixes all of your stresses and any of your burnouts. I like to do a combination. Like, I'm an awful person. I love a list. So I will write down everything that's stressing me out, and sometimes just seeing it on paper, you go, oh, okay, in the grand scheme of things, that's fine. I can get through that. It's now manageable because it's there. It's just a tiny physical thing that I can go, I can work through that, and it just helps me organise and prioritise, and I get to move forward from there. I'm also a really big reader, so I definitely lean into escapism. I will go, that has been an awful day, I'm going to go read a book in something insane, and go, there's my brain turned off and fully engaged in something else for a while, and I find that really helps with stress and just coming back down to earth. And a lot of it is about perspective. I've got a partner who works in sort of children's care, and his horror stories are typically very, very different from my own. I will go, oh gosh, someone put the phone down on me in the middle of a conversation. It was awful, it threw me off my game for the rest of the day. We've got these really big quotas to be hitting, we've got all of these stresses coming into the company. He comes in with different pressures and just gives me perspective on what I'm doing, knowing in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. This is manageable, this is workable, and it's okay if you need to take breaks. I think that's one of the big things that probably echoes to a lot of people. Your mental health is incredibly important. If you don't address the burnout early enough, if you don't look after your body, and if you don't look after your body and mind will make those decisions for you, and you might find that your recovery takes months instead of a long weekend. So I think that's just something. Keep the perspective and make sure that you are prioritising your well-being. It is just as important as your career.
Really appreciate Sharon.
I think for me, very similar, but step away, take a breath, breathe, play. I call it Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Phone a friend, because they'll listen, help. Ask the audience, go shout your neighbour, help. And just try recognise when you've had enough. And it's the stepping away, just go for a breather. It's still going to be there when you come back, so sitting there staring at your screen is not going to change anything. So I think speak to people. When you've got a great team, everybody works together. So if somebody's hurting, I'm sure they would let everybody know.
A problem shared is a problem half, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's just sharing it and just recognising when you've had enough.
That's brilliant. And look, before we wrap up the session, could each of you give us perhaps a bold prediction for 2026 and a safe prediction for 2026?
My safe prediction is that we're going to see more and more AI sort of solutions and technologies. We know they will be everywhere. They are the buzzword. They are very prevalent at the moment. And in terms of my bold prediction, I think AI is being adopted in the same way that sort of the silver bullet solution of a SOC was a couple of years back. It has been sold as, if you get this AI solution, you won't need to look at anything else. It can do more than you've ever possibly imagined. And I think because it's not being seen as a risk in totality, we're missing a lot of areas. I think cybersecurity is coming in behind it retroactively. I do worry that we are going to see a really major AI-related cybersecurity breach.
Massive house of cards, I think, that are built on. Certainly agree with you in that respect.
I think my safe one is we're going to see more breaches. The ones that have just happened are just a tickle. So I do think it's going to get bigger. They're going to be bigger. They're going to be harder and impact massively. And I think my bold prediction would be stakeholders are actually going to understand. They have to.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's my bold prediction.
And any final thoughts before we wrap up the session?
No, just that thank you for inviting us to the podcast as well.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed it, and
we enjoyed
it's
it as
nice
well.
to actually talk about these subjects as well.
That's great. Well, look, at some point in the near future, what we want to do is bring some of our guests together, do an online panel discussion. It'd be great to have both of you join that at some point in the future. And for our audience, if they want to sort of connect with you outside of LinkedIn or even contact the business, what's the best way for them to contact you both?
So it'd likely be just emailing into Dionach, hello@dionach.com, or it'd be sort of connecting on LinkedIn, or just calling into the company main line. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of our lovely, amazing team picking up the phone. And everyone's always happy to have a chat. We definitely have a company of gabbers, I'll say that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.